Thank you very, very much for this introduction, and thanks so much to our three artists who are participating in the panel today. It's our dream come true to have Athi, Nandi, and Zanele together. They are going to make presentations. Today we will look at the work of these three extraordinary artists, and I would like to not lose any time because there's so much to see and introduce right away our first speaker, Athi-Patra Ruga, who uses performance, video, textiles, and also printmaking to explore notions of utopia and also dystopia, different materials and also memory. His most recent project is an extraordinary Gesamtkunstwerk. It's called The Future White Woman of Azania. It took place actually, so it's FWWOA. It took place at SF MoMA and YVCA. He also is a participant in the 52nd Venice Biennale in 2013. He's exploring all kinds of border zones between disciplines also, so it's perfect in terms of the context here of Indaba, as said, the idea of a pool of knowledge. He brings together fashion, performance, and art. And when we spoke earlier today about utopia, I came across a quote from him, which I wanted to read here, because I think it summarizes wonderfully the practice and connects actually right away to the video he's going to show us. Here's the quote: "However, I have always been interested in the explorer, archaeologist, always up for a learning. The ever-discovering of all proposals of utopia is fascinating." Very warm welcome to Athi-Patra Ruga.
Today, I want to introduce you to a place called Azania. Azania happens as a myth and a fact, and somewhere in between, it got lost and forgotten. Azania was first mentioned by Pliny the Elder in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. The Erythraean Sea becomes the Azanian Sea, becomes the Indian Ocean. Geographically, the Azanian Ocean stretches from the Horn of Africa down to the Cape of Agulhas. It is a constitutional monarch with the versatile Queen Ivy as its head. As a constitutional monarch, there is a legislature, which is headed by Abu Dade. Azania and all its rulers are actually made up of women only, as they call the elders, who got genocided in 2013, bless them. And a new Azania came up. The new Azania is matrilineal. The new Azania has only women, as I said. With my project, I wanted to create the myth through performance and the many disciplines in performance as to what Azania could be. I started out by actually creating the character, who you'll see later, called the Future White Woman of Azania. Say it with me. The Future White Woman of Azania. The Future White Woman of Azania is made up of an identity made up of latex filled with air and other goodies. With it comes tinsel, with it comes powder, with it comes water, but most importantly, air. The identity is based on air. Her action is to march throughout cities, towns, and she's gone through many places. She was born in Argentina. She moved to Berlin. She has worked in Kenya. She has worked here in Cape Town. She has ruled everywhere. And she actually ended up settling and actually ruling and populating Azania. And Azania is wherever you want it to be honest. So now the tools that I used with it, with Azania, is that the monarch, and with many monarchs actually, there's the tool of procession, where people move in one direction together, whether they're doing the ghetto aerobics, other known as the toi-toi, or they march all along to Marikana and get their asses shot, or they actually, without speaking, have a constructivist way of saying we are together moving forward. Another description of Azania, which is probably closer to the truth, which always sucks, is that Azania is what took people through the hardest times in this country, really. The promise of a utopia, the promise of a working together towards a place, something that made us keep on fighting for human rights and for equality, and a promise for probably post-94, I always say post-2014 because it makes us all responsible for it. With that, I want to start with the processions again. The procession is a tool that I use in my works and in the performances where I've moved everywhere. I've moved from one space to another, using the balloon as a metaphor and the costume as a metaphor. And actually, the greatest choreographer in my works is the costume, because it forces you and engineers you to sit in a certain way. I see someone sitting in a pencil skirt right there. She's sitting in a certain way because she can't really sit with her legs open. But that is the whole use of costume in the work that I do. And then it moves on to tapestries. It then moves on to video. And it then moves on to installations. It moves on to everything else. Azania cannot be described. Azania belongs to all of us. And this is something that really, truly inspires me to actually go and explore it. However, Azania needs to be redefined. Azania needs to be redefined for us. Where do we belong? What is this intimacy that is Azania? So Azania is a constitutional monarch. Azania is a place that is only made up of women. Why did I decide to actually kill all men? Helmut Newton, actually, because one of my greatest influences is Helmut Newton's A World Without Men, which is a beautiful photographic series. However, I always think with all the drama that we've been through since our African dream started to, let's say, go catatonic in some way, I just started blaming everyone. And the first step of grieving an end of a dream is to probably blame someone. So I blamed us men. Blame myself too, because I'm a part of the problem. Somewhere we've gone wrong, and somewhere we've actually inherited some really crazy shit. Sorry. But I want to purge. And with the movement of Azania, it is all about purging. One of the people that are actually around in Azania is Abu Dade, which is a conclave of nuns. But these nuns have this special power of basically breeding without sperm. And it's like Mujaji. Who's heard of Queen Mujaji here? Raise your hands. It's Mujaji basically with a reproductive system that can actually just basically not need men. That's what happens in the future of Azania. Why are they white? Because whiteness for me does not represent a race. I decide for it not to represent a race. It's a decision that I wish that we all could take sometimes, just for, I don't know, entitlement issues to calm down a bit. But I would like to actually go on to say that where I'm from, I'm a Xhosa man, and I was not raised Christian. I don't know if that's fortunate or not. But to be white, you spread white powder, you spread white ochre, and you spread like lime on your skin because you don't want people or bad spirits to see you. And also for you to be a seer of the future. There's a purity to it. You look at a soapbox, there's always white in it. And for me, that is how I describe it. Us having some kind of eye that looks into the future. Some kind of eye that makes us reimagine the way we see the world. Our world, Azania. Woman, well, we've gotten rid of all the men. So there is no reason why we should speak about men in a new utopia, should we? And Azania, once again, is this utopia that I want to go on about. So in 2010, I started doing these performances. The first one was in Argentina, where I actually bought these balloons, and I wanted to just create this character whose identity was all air. And I think that latex, the sound of latex rubbing against each other, and also the materials you can put into latex, and the popping sound, is like a beautiful catharsis that happens while you are going through a catharsis of a procession. A cleansing, saying with one voice, we are going somewhere together. We can have people who go out, who deviate and stuff, but the procession is about a common vision, a vision that we all have. We moved on, and I remember coming up with the word, the future white woman of Azania. It is from this idea of how we relate, actually, to each other. Either the word white as race, and how we all relate to these ideas. And they're all rubbish, really, for me, because, I still cannot find my place in it. And Azania I created because I wanted to put myself in the dead center of a world and be maybe the sense of the attraction to it, or even just bring everyone who doesn't feel like they belong in this world our elders have created for us. It moved on, and I started adding more people and adding more volume to the idea of utopia. And with that came me walking through places like Grahamstown, walking everywhere, and just basically popping these balloons. My first sort of like introduction to performance art was through the intervention. And I felt that it was the most democratic way of having a story built up. So everyone who sees the performance in public asks me what I'm doing it for. And I think that's the most important question. What am I doing it for? What am I doing it for? I'm doing it so that we all feel that we have a place within my body. My body becomes a landscape, and most wars are fought on landscapes. Most wars are fought on women's bodies, which is the landscape of the world. And I just wanted to raise this issue. I wanted to go through this catharsis, this, you can say it's me beating myself up and going through public, carrying some kind of weight as some kind of penance or task that I have to do to purge. You can say that it's me creating spectacle so that people can ask more questions about what the character is all about. I started adding other elements to it, video, performance. I started adding tapestry to it, stained glass. And if you listen to that list that I'm talking about, you can see that all of these, stained glass, tapestry, procession, are ways that you can say even in the past, people used these mediums to communicate. I always say it was the first pop art, really, because of the democracy that I want to do with the performances. It moved on, and it just grew in size. It is starting to be this world that contains not only the balloon character of the Azanians, but now we have fauna. We've got monarch moths, as you can see in the background. Yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of monarch butterfly thingies flying around. And we have saber-toothed zebras as well, because I thought that fracking for some weird reason. Things mutate, genders mutate, animals mutate. We're all evolving, and that's why it is very good for us to create a new world for each other. So I would like now to close up by playing a video of the process of catharsis for Miss Azania.
Now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Nandipha Mntambo, who has actually become very well known for her sculptures, her videos and photography, and similarly actually to Athi works between all these different media. Very often the focus is on the human female body, on identity, by using organic materials. What is interesting in terms of pooling of knowledge and bringing disciplines together is that Nandi studied initially forensic pathology and then moved from there into art, but has always kept these bridges also to science. Her work has been shown in the Sydney Biennale in 2010, and then more recently in Stephen Hall's Kiasma Museum, the Contemporary Art Museum in Helsinki. One of her favorite materials is the skin of the cow, which very often is used in her culture. And in a conversation talking about this aspect of exploring sort of the physical, Nandi said, "My intention is to explore the physical and tactile properties of hide and aspects of control that allow or prevent me from manipulating this material in the context of the female body and contemporary art. I've used cowhide as a means to subvert expected associations with corporal presence, femininity, sexuality, and also vulnerability. The work I create seeks to challenge and subvert preconceptions regarding representation of the female body." Her work has a lot to do with attraction and repulsion, also connections to art from the past. As Panofsky once said, very often the future is invented with fragments from the past. So you have in Nandi's work a lot of connections, for example, to ancient Greek sculptures. And very often it has to do with attraction and repulsion. A very, very warm welcome to Nandipha Mntambo.
Good afternoon. Hi. Thank you for having me. It's really wonderful to be part of this program. So, as Hans mentioned, I am trained as a sculptor, and photography is a part of what I do. So, what I'm going to be talking about and maybe introducing some people to is my photographic work. I'm, I guess, interested in chemical process and how it works. So I got drawn to the material of cowhide at art school because I was trying to find an alternative to, I guess, things like wood carving or, oh, is this mine? Oh, to materials such as wood and metal. So I was lucky enough to be here at UCT at the Michaelis School of Fine Art and worked under Jane Alexander at the time, which is really amazing. And the school is located in an area where the Museum of Natural History is right next door. So I found a taxidermist who helped me with what I was interested in. So he taught me how to tan hide, and in a kind of joke towards myself, because I went to a lot of girls' schools growing up, there was this idea around beauty and attraction and repulsion that seemed to center around the body being hairless. And because I'm not a person who has a lot of body hair, I couldn't be part of these conversations. So waxing and shaving weren't anything that I knew anything about, really. So in a kind of joke towards myself, I started trying to understand how a viewer would respond to a completely hairy female form. And this work is the first photographic work that I did, and it was inspired by another photographer called Peter Magubane. These are all molds of my mom that I had made in cowhide. She, like me, is a Swazi, so didn't really encounter, because of her age and where she's from, didn't really encounter apartheid in the same way that a lot of women of her age would have or have encountered apartheid in South Africa. And I really love this picture by Peter Magubane of these mine workers who are standing in front of this very long, it looks like a urinal, but it's a black and white photo of these men who are naked and having a medical inspection, and they have their arms up. And what struck me about that photograph is that I couldn't tell the age of any of them. I couldn't tell what sort of cultural grouping they came from. And because my mom had this experience of not living in South Africa during apartheid, she couldn't be part of these conversations that a lot of women her age who happened to be black were part of. So in an understanding, or in trying to understand how she feels about her body, how she feels about her reality, how that would or wouldn't relate to me, I made these molds of her. And what was interesting about it is that when I was having the discussion with her about making the molds, her first kind of reaction or question, oh, sorry, how do you go back? Oh, or issue was that she felt worried that the viewer would see her naked. And what was fascinating to me was that the way that cowhide sort of represents the body, in my mind, didn't even give the idea of nakedness. So it was interesting to kind of have those conversations with her around her body and possibly thinking around how my body would look like when I'm her age. Then, I guess as an extension of how I work, I got interested in mythology and how the animal human is something that people for civilizations have kind of been speaking about, whether they be gods or kind of these alternate realities. So I got into Greek mythology at the time and the story of Europa. And so, in a kind of joke as well, tried to imagine myself as the Minotaur. So worked with a photographer called Tony Menkes, and we created this fictional woman, man, animal thing that was based on me, but centered around this whole, I guess, question around the animal human, the male, female, attraction and repulsion, and how we understand it. And in an extension to that, was really interested in Caravaggio's work at the time and how he knew how to create these very dark, deep, lovely palettes. So looking at a lot of his work and trying to, I guess, understand, I think in all of us, there are these elements that we really like and these elements that we don't like about ourselves. And in how we form relationships, we have these kind of mirroring elements of how we choose friends, how we choose lovers, and trying to maybe come to terms with elements of myself that I didn't quite like or understand. So creating these images that were about a mirror image, a recognition of myself as what I don't like, but as what I like at the same time. So this series, this is Narcissus, and the one that was before was the Rape of Europa. And so creating these kind of lush, dark spaces where I was both myself, but something else in the same frame. Oh, how do you make it start playing? This is a video. No, it's not. Okay. Well, it's supposed to be a video that was centered around my interest in the animal human and how we understand protecting oneself versus fighting. And I encountered this bullfighting arena in Mozambique that's now become an abandoned space, and decided to create this performance that is to myself, but also in this very public space that's now no longer used for bullfighting, and try and understand how to become both the fighter, the animal, and the audience within the space. So I'm going to try and fast forward because it's quite long, but just to give you a sense of the architecture and I guess an idea of a history that isn't there anymore, something that doesn't exist in the same way any longer. So I created this bullfighting jacket for myself and was lucky enough to visit Spain and Portugal for a long time and kind of job shadowed a whole of bullfighters while I was there, and had this grand plan of being trained as a bullfighter, which didn't really work out in the way that I'd hoped. So I had to come home and find a choreographer who then helped me with the moves, so to speak. So learning how to pretend in a way where I was trying to look very serious, as you can see. as part of the series, I have some photographs that accompany it. And at the time, I was really interested in androgyny as well, and how we understand the male-female, or if we understand the male-female. And the fact that bullfighting is such a male sort of centered sport, because what actually happened is that I found a bullfighter who's now retired, and he breeds bulls now. And his son is the person that he now trains to be a fighter. And I eventually, because he spoke Portuguese and I spoke English, and so the communication with us was quite a interesting space. I had to rely on his eldest daughter to be our intermediary. And eventually, because I was coming to their house every day, hanging out, going to bullfights, and eventually he says to his daughter to ask me, what do you want? Like, what do you want from me? And I said to him, I want you to train me as a bullfighter. And he was like, no, I can't do it because you're a woman. And what was so amazing about that interaction was that he wasn't concerned about me being black, wasn't concerned about me being from Africa. His immediate response was just, no, you're a woman, I can't do it. And it was just really refreshing to have something that simple but complicated as part of why he wouldn't or couldn't help me. So in an extension of, I guess, the whole trying to understand the animal-human, I started wearing, because before that video, I just used a mold of myself, but not really in the decision of wearing the work that I was making. I decided to create this series where I was taking photographs of myself wearing my sculptures. So this is 2 of those. And then, okay, this is another video where, because of my interest in bullfighting, I started moving around and trying to understand how it's been explored, I guess, in other art forms. So was interested in dance at this time and created this video called the Paso Doble, or of the Paso Doble. And this is a dance where the male within the dancing space would be the bullfighter, and the female would be the cloth that he would use, or his muleta, to try and entice the bull. So created this piece where, as an extension of this idea of androgyny, or not completely understanding who's the male and who's the female within the space, I worked with 2 female dancers who look very androgynous. So you can't immediately tell who's a male, or if there even is a male within the dance. And as an extension of that, was commissioned by Pirelli to make some work for last year's Joburg Art Fair. And at the time was interested in the shadow and how we understand that space. So worked with the same choreographer who helped me with the bullfighting video in the first place, and had this really interesting space where we were dancing with each other, but also kind of fighting at the same time, and wanting him to be my body double within the space. So created this work that resulted in a series of photographs. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nandi, thank you so very, very much. And it's now my great, great pleasure to introduce our third speaker, Zanele Muholi. It's got to be a longer introduction because Zanele won so many awards. It's almost a Georges Perec list. Zanele was born in Umlazi in Durban and currently lives in Johannesburg, studied advanced photography at Market Photo Workshop in Newtown, Johannesburg between 2001 and 2003, then studied the Master of Fine Art, Documentary Media at Ryerson University in Toronto, where her thesis actually mapped the visual history of black lesbian identities and politics in post-apartheid South Africa. Among the many, many awards, in 2013, the Fine Prize for an Emerging Artist at the Carnegie Museum in Pennsylvania, the Prince Claus Award very recently, there was just a celebration, the Index on Censorship in London, also the Women of the Year Award in Johannesburg, the Imbo Kodo Award in Johannesburg, the Feather of the Year award in Johannesburg. There have been many moments where actually the work has created very, very public discussions. In August 2009, the Minister of Arts and Culture walked out of an exhibition that featured Muholi's photography, calling it immoral, offensive, and going against nation building. In her response, Muholi expressed her sentiments by saying, "It's paralyzing. I expected people to think before they act and to ask questions. I wanted to create dialogue." And as today is all about creating dialogue, I think that was an urgent quote. Muholi worked for Behind the Mask, a defunct online magazine on LGBTI in Africa. And that's also very interesting because her mentor, David Goldblatt, who is going to present here tomorrow, when I interviewed him 2 years ago, and we had a long conversation, said that for him, everything with photography started with magazines, like Life magazines, many different magazines in the 50s. So it's fascinating that for Muholi in her generation, again, it somehow starts with magazine, but a very, much more online magazine. In 2002, she co-founded the Forum for the Empowerment of Women, FEW, a black lesbian organization dedicated to providing a safe space for women. In 2009, she founded Icaniso, a non-profit organization concerned with visual activism. The motto there is produce, educate, disseminate. In 2010, Muholi co-directed a documentary, Difficult Love. And a very, very warm welcome to Zanele Muholi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the Design Indaba team for inviting all of us here. And Ravi, you've been so great. There are few great men in this world. Thank you so much. But I like to say, I've been seated there listening to Nandi and Athi speaking and Ulrich introducing us. And I've been thinking to myself, art is queer. Queer is the art. We are queer people. But doesn't mean that you are queer. Just to say to a number of parents, mothers and fathers who are in this house, or those who have adopted children, please love your lesbian children, your gay children, your trans children, because if you don't do that, no one will do that on your behalf. And I'm here and also, without being rude, if there's any person who's allergic to LGBTI individuals or who is homophobic, please just leave the room because I'm about to start to talk now on real issues. Okay, my name is Zanele Muholi. I'm a visual activist. I produce art to push a political agenda because I've realized that if I speak to other activists, I'll be speaking to people who know about the agendas. And if I speak to the artists and creative directors and those who are in this field, I'll be speaking to the right individuals because some of you will help me to create and denounce all the phobias that are there in this world. And I'm standing here, and I read about 3 days ago in Uganda, the president of Uganda just signed the anti-homosexuality bill. And I'm looking at collaborating with any person who's willing to denounce that because people are going to be killed, people are going to be crucified, people are going to suffer unnecessarily. So if you dare to take a stand with me, please journey with me. And I'm not going to talk too much because and I have said so many things, and I'm trying, and I'm not trying alone. We're trying together with so many individuals. Just to say thank you so much to all those people who are supporting artists to produce their work, who might not be really credited for all the hard work that they are doing for us. For me, I work with a lot of individuals who have names and surnames. I work with the Stevenson Gallery team, and that's my second family, besides the Muholi family. And I kind of like brainstorm with a lot of queer-minded persons or people like Abu Ati, Abu Nandi. So we are all in this mess together. I'm not going to talk too much, but I'll be all open to questions. And just to say to Ulrike, it's always like disturbed me to think, you know, Lulu Xingwana is always pitched in my agenda as if she's the only best thing ever happened to me. Actually, yeah, no, it hurts to think that I have to have that line read about when I'm being introduced, because she came out after me and I've been out for so long. Yeah. I am going to show a short video because I believe in collaborations, and I think that artists and creative minds and academics and all the experts in any space, we need to come together and produce in order to have work that will live beyond us and whenever we are not there. And in Zulu, they said, Ayofa amadoda ziyosala izibongo. I'm Zulu, by the way. I'm going to show a video and then leave it to all of us to respond to questions that you might have. It's a documentary that will give you a sense of how I produce work and also the people that I work with. I work with Human Rights Watch. You know, as an activist, we always look for people to work with. And some people are allergic. They tend to not to want to deal with the queer agenda, but we're doing it anyways, because I know for sure in this room, which is almost full, there's quite a lot of cousins, people who feel like me, and it's okay. It's okay to have lesbians and gay creatives or creative directors because we need you or we need them. It's okay to have gay people in any workplace who are gays and lesbians or homosexuals and be recognized and be respected for the creative ideas that they bring into workplace. It's okay to have educators who are lesbians or gays or trans because that's the right thing to do, that's who we are. And we can't hide from any cabinets or closets in those workplaces or in any space because we are part and parcel of those spaces anyways. So here we are. The short is called We Live in Fear. And if you have any questions, I'm here. And thank you so much for your time.
I will be there forevermore. There's a special star that shines every evening in your eyes. Special star that shines. It's gonna hit a lullaby. Special song, put Vaseline. Good. I'm Zanele Muholi, reporting live from South Africa. I'm a visual activist. I take photographs. The kind of work that I do is on queer politics, gender politics, politics of race. I'm fascinated by LGBTI individuals in different spaces. I've learned how beautiful this place is, how important our lives are, and why we should preserve a history about our own people, about us. Very, very interesting township. I've done a lot of shots here. I shot the first gay wedding here in 2002. I don't even know that there are lesbians who own dogs. This is for the first time that I know someone who owns a dog. Ah, the light is good here. Yeah. I'm going to shoot a follow-up portrait of Tumi. I used to be a hairstylist. Really? Yeah. We had a life before we came out. Somebody asked me how influential am I when it comes to this portrait. And I said to people, I just want people to look good. Oh. I really, really want people to be fresh. We're going to Limpopo Pride.
I'm coming. When I leave the address.
We're connected by photography. I was doing photo shoot here in Guatemala, and I thought that she was just a very nice person to be in the Faces and Phases series that I'm working on. You have a young generation that is growing up now who doesn't share maybe the same, you know, commonalities like lesbians who were out there in the 90s or late 80s before South Africa gained independence. The young lesbians now, they are socialites, connected by the social medias and all of that, and they're free when it comes to photographs, etc., etc. I know maybe some people get surprised when you start photographing.
I was surprised, but at the same time it was fun. I had fun and I didn't know that I'm photogenic. So since then, I like to take myself pictures.
So this is 3 years later. We are in the same township, and the township is so popular with
The killings.
with no gay lives. There are a lot of gay people in Guatemala. And also it has since become notorious for hate crimes because in 2008, a known black lesbian was brutally murdered here. 2012 was one of the most painful years in our history. We lost a lot of members of our communities. And hate crimes specifically, curative rapes and lesbian murders became one of the brutality that is stained in our brains forever. We live in fear. Death happened to bind us. Hate crimes have become a binding factor for the LGBTI communities. We come together to either give support or to confirm that somebody has been killed. Then that person becomes a statistic. Another case number becomes part of our history. And what are we doing about it? Do we always go and attend funerals and then after funerals you go home, you wait for another funeral? What? You have to document. You are forced to document.
Transformation by
I don't only do
Transformation by Zanele Muholi.
No, by you, this is your head. I'm using visuals as a way of creating awareness, capturing the moments, those truths and realities the world will learn about our cultures. I could give you something tangible and say, feel it, this is it, see. You invited to be in that space even though you were not there. Let's put it in and out. We're shooting faces and faces, not fashion. Yeah. There is the other side of me when I perform. There is the other side of me when I'm me. How will you engage with me? You look so gay, yeah? Nice. Actually, you look like a drag queen. Most of the time I work with people that I know. They're no strangers to me. I call the people who are in my photographs participants because you partake in a project that will inform many audiences.
And when it comes to these young lesbians you are teaching?
Any person who's interested in learning is welcome to learn how to take photographs. I provide cameras as long as a person will be able to document what will then become a contribution towards Inganyeso, which is the organization that I formed. One cannot do these major projects alone, which is why I invited people to come on board and work with me. And it means that it's not lonely anymore. Take 5. I started this project called Inganyeso to ensure that people who are featuring in my photographs get a platform to share their own lives and work. People get to read about sex, people get to read about anything that they will never, in as much as South Africa is so democratic, they'll never see that kind of text in the mainstream media. Most of the team members, we are black lesbians. People occupy different positions within the Inganyeso crew. Bongi is a documenter, and Lirato is a graduate. She's a journalist, and we just posted a new story on Pep Smear that she wrote this morning. Now I had to beg Lirato to cut that hair, and look how beautiful this person is. He did Lirato's portrait in 2010, so we're gonna have a nice follow-up shot. I train and I will continue to train with or without funding. Because if I wait for someone to validate my existence, it will mean that I'm shortchanging myself. Recently, we had to decide whether we buy a fridge where we live or we buy a new lens. So we sleep on the floor, it's nice, documenting with my crew, it's fabulous. I love the people that I work with. A lot of people are reading this Pep Smear thing.
For, lesbian or even butch women, it's something that's, if I don't know if I can say taboo. But I don't know, you said you need me to revise it.
No, you have to do part 2.
Part 2, what's part 2 about?
I don't think that you gave it your all, like how you write when you tackle the issues of hate crimes and other. What would you like to read about in the mainstream?
Not even read, even when seeing, I'd like to see an advert of a family where it's the mother and the baby, and they're fighting germs in the household. It shouldn't only be about the violence and the homophobia.
We want to bring about change in spaces that are queerphobic. We still have religious leaders who want to use homosexuality as a scapegoat for their own hate. Instead of dealing with poverty, instead of dealing with the corrupted systems that we find ourselves in, and that's what leads to many hate crimes. See where there's white concrete wall? Is where Noxolo Nogwaza was found. Noxolo Nogwaza is a victim of hate crime who was brutally murdered. Her head was crushed with a big stone. Her teeth were all over the place. Noxolo Nogwaza's children are not the first to be orphaned by hate crimes. What will people say to the children what happened to their mothers? Noxolo's case is still outstanding. I don't know how far do they investigate these cases. We all document that lesbian funeral. Every person who has a cell phone with a camera, it doesn't matter what quality. And all of us come together in one space and download and share. You make that document viral. We want to say to our government, this is what I'm talking about when I talk of a lesbian funeral. It's my wish that we could find positive lesbian icons on Wikipedia as well, other than to always find brutal murders. You Google black lesbians in South Africa, you'll see what you see there. There's nothing that focuses on same-sex love versus these hate crimes. When do we start talking about intimacy? I produce pictures that are intimate because I'm an intimate being. This intimacy that disrupts the perpetrator leads to us being killed. It starts by the same-sex love that is disorganizing the mindset of the homophobe. More education is needed. Mainstream communities need to come on board and help us and ensure that there is no other hate crime. Projecting positivity sometimes can lead to the change. Projecting brutality and violations could lead to further violence. So I think that we need to find a balance in which we project these realities.
Let's go to the beach, eat, let's go get away. They say what they're gonna say. Hello, beauty.
Nkanyiso is at Limpopo Pride 2013. I came with the Nkanyiso crew last night. Once we're done here, we're going to put it up on social networks to make sure that people who might not be here understand what is taking place and get the visuals. People think that pink cities are Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. People cannot even imagine that there is Limpopo Pride. It's very important for us to say that LGBTI individuals are all over. Any space is possible. So we're here to celebrate with the people of this province. It's about saying, I want to be counted in South African history. Claiming my full citizenship, it means that I have to write that part of history.
Let's have a DJ, let's have the music there.
Zanele, thank you so much for your great talk and showing us this amazing film. I think you might have many questions, so I'm just going to maybe throw in 2 or 3 questions to you, and then we can open it to the floor. One of the things which I thought was interesting is that we had great examples now of all your practice and recent work, but I thought it would be interesting to maybe make a little journey to the beginnings and how it all started. And before we had a conversation, and Zanele, you said that David Goldblatt was somehow your mentor, but that maybe your heroes or inspirations came more from activism. So I wanted to ask the 3 of you, who are your mentors and who are your heroes? And maybe we can start with Zanele.
When I started, David becomes one of the most important men in our history, South African history. One of many, obviously. There are quite a number of few, like, good guys who have produced amazing images that inspired many of us, especially for those individuals who are born in apartheid South Africa here. As photographers and people who are making sense or activists, we're trying to make sense, and we are reading what people have done way before us, you know. So Godblood became one of those people. I've read his work, and when I approached him, I didn't want somebody who was gay to read my photographs. I didn't want, because then I would have been spoke to the same person. And so I like his work, and he read my work and critiqued my work, and in that way I improved, you know, my bit. And one other person that becomes my icons will be Cindy Wemakona. She's a Cape Town-based mother, very open-minded, and she writes. She has written about so many kind of books that speaks to me as an individual. And she doesn't necessarily need to be lesbian or to be a mother of a lesbian to make sense, but the fact that she writes and inspire many women to write and grow or improve their texts, it makes sense. And one of the favorite books that she wrote, it's called Please Take Photographs. So that's Cindy Wemakona for me. Thanks.
And Nandi, can you tell us about your inspirations or heroes or mentors?
You know, I think for me, I guess because of coming to UCT and being in a situation of having Jane Alexander, who was my close mentor, companion, she's my person. In terms of a hero, I would say Louise Bourgeois, probably. I like her a lot.
And Athi, what about you?
Moving from East London to go study fashion in Johannesburg and having great desires of actually penetrating and participating in the art practice. A lovely lady named Tracy Rose, whose courage is beyond everything. I think that's why I learned courage and to step outside. She's the one who taught me courage, how to wrestle with technique, and how to tell my story through technique. When it comes to heroes, I'll open a list. Wow. There's Vaginal Davis, Dr. Vaginal Davis, who manages to have such great nuances in how he performs. Eric B. as well. Many people actually use their body in a way that really is a middle finger maybe to the technique of dance and are actually embedded in performance art history because of their movements. The Ballet Russe as well, Nijinsky, Diaghilev, they somehow had a courage to step forward as well. Zanele, Nandipha, they came at a time when I was starting out, and they've always given me some great advice.
Sorry.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing that time is up.
Oh, time is up.
No, we need to have a few more minutes. I hope that's okay, because there's a few urgent questions, no? Can we have, it would be nice to have maybe one or two more questions. One thing I thought was interesting is that actually Joost Bosland, we spoke this morning, you know, with him, thought maybe you are a generation, and then we spoke earlier in the green room. By the way, I love your thing about courage. My neighbor, Jean Rouch in Paris, always talked about the necessity for immense courage. But to come back to this idea of the generation, you said maybe you're not so much one generation, maybe more cousins. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I like the cousins idea. Zanele, you start.
Yes.
Speaking of generations, respect.
You know, talking about generations, I said we are cousins because we speak here. I mean, what I like about South Africa most is that it doesn't matter how famous you are, we don't need bodyguards. So my cousins don't need bodyguards. I said we're not generations as such, but I think this is the beginning of an intergenerational kind of conversations of Athi and Nandi, born in the 80s, myself being born in the 70s. Obviously, they come from different school of thoughts, with Nandi from Michaelis, which maybe before didn't have black students who were studying art. And for Athi, who kind of like pick up and use the street as his university and mastered it. And me coming from Market for a Workshop, which might not be a space that is perceived as the major for many who are studying at universities. So that generation doesn't necessarily mean generation in true sense and how it's defined in Oxford Dictionary. We have a South African dictionary, by the way. Yeah, so we know there's a gap between us, but we're able to articulate our issues in a manner that we complement each other without feeling the heat of being an artist, you know. But we're producing, so we cousins, we don't necessarily need to share the same surnames, but we're doing it.
There could be a way as well that I think we do become a generation, cousins or not, and that is how we decimate our information with technologies, new mediums, especially the internet, you know. I remember when I was starting out, I didn't have much of an intergenerational conversation where I only had one person who took me under their wing, but to reach out to other people was very tough. And MySpace became a place whereby I could actually do my interventions in downtown Johannesburg, post them up, and everyone could see them who was my friend. And I still use that technique now. Zanele, you use it a lot as well with Inkanyiso. So I feel that binds us in some way.
I think I'm left out of that one.
Oh, no, you still need to join Instagram, I forget.
No, and Facebook too.
Yeah, but you're all over the internet, you're Googleable.
Now, there are many, many more things we wanted to discuss, but I did promise Ravi that this is for once not going to be a marathon. So maybe one last question. We wanted to talk about activism also, but I think that was implicit in the three of your talks. This, importance of activism, which binds the three of you together also. But maybe I wanted to ask you one last question, which is the kind of only recurrent question in all my conversation, which is about unrealized projects. And I was kind of wondering if the three of you could tell us about the dream, about a project which maybe has been too big to be realized or too small to be realized, or a project which has been forgotten in a locker, a project you haven't had time to realize, a project which was censored. There can be projects which are unrealized because of censorship. And last but not least, very importantly, my lay friend Doris Lessing always told me, when we talk about unrealized projects, we should also think about this idea actually of maybe self-censorship projects we didn't dare to do. So there's a whole range, of the unbuilt roads of unrealized projects. I wanted to ask the three of you if you could tell us about one of your probably many unrealized projects.
Would you like to start?
I'd like you to start. Okay. Yeah? Okay. I've always been fascinated by intimacy. The internet is quite an intimate space for me because I find outside to be very daunting, believe it or not. But also when it comes to the history of masculine intimacy and sort of like gathering the history and creating gay and lesbian heroes, I always wanted to do a piece, a procession maybe, because processions are this ritual that brings to attention a history of a space. I would love to set maybe a short film or do a performance based around ideas of intimacy circa the times of Robben Island between those two men or between men there. Because I think that a number 4 or a Robben Island or wherever, who took care of these men when we were all together? I don't think it's about sex. I don't think it's about sexuality, but it's about that human feeling, that reaching out. Yeah? Yeah, it's going to probably go into a retro called Things I Forgot to Do. But that's one of those dream projects of mine.
Zanele, your unrealized project?
Besides not having married my girlfriend that I love so much, Valerie, the biggest project that I'd like to do or embark on will be to photograph Bishop Tutu. And he's one of the most positive men in our history who's speaking out against all homophobias and the phobias that are there in the world. As a straight man, as a father, as a religious man or person, he has supported a lot of homosexuals in this country, in Africa, and around the globe. He's denouncing continuously without fail. So that's the man that I'd like to photograph and pause for 2 minutes and touch him with my own hands and say, we adore you, we respect you, and thank you so much for being a father to us.
And Nandi, what are your unbuilt roads?
I guess mine is more in line with the idea of intimacy and how we understand it. The idea of the things that sometimes we don't know how to say or don't say because it would complicate your relationship with your mother or your relationship with your father or your relationship with your child. So that kind of like strange space that we just all don't really know how to go into because it makes things uncomfortable. So trying to find a way of either documenting it or understanding it or bringing it to the surface somehow would be great. And I'd probably start with my mother. Yeah, figure that funny space out, the elephant in the room that we all have.
I really hope that these 3 urgent projects can happen, because if we talk about unrealized projects, it's not to keep them unrealized, we make them happen, and I hope that this great gathering today will contribute to make these 3 projects happen. I'd like to thank so much Athi, Nandi, and Zanele for these amazing, amazing presentations. Of course, Ravi for making everything possible. And of course, thank all you for being here today. I hope we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9:20. Thank you. And for 9:20 for 89+. And also tomorrow, of course, David Goldblatt and many, many more things. Thank you so much.